How's it going, everybody? I really hope you guys are having a good one. Wish you guys a very good weekend. Today's video, it's why I no longer like talking to boomers. Boomers give me this vibe that everything is going to be okay. Things are going to get better, and I don't really believe it anymore. I just believe that times are not going to get any better or any worse. It's just going to become a new reality. Everybody is so entitled, specifically the boomers, of why I never got married, how come I don't have any children, since I'm already in my 30. I just turned 30 last year. I'm about to hit 31 this year. Well, let's start by mentioning if you're not already a guy that can really have something very valuable, such as status when it comes to, if you don't make six-figure income, I'm saying this for a sub five male, if you're going to be a sub five or high tier armor, you need a six-figure income. You need a place. You need to have a. You got to not only just be a provider. You just got to be a guy that's going to give you a promising future, where the girl is going to be able to tolerate you and stay with you a lot longer, as long as you can provide a typical lifestyle that she craves. Other than that, I don't see no other point. I'm not making this up out of my ass. Time to time has demonstrated some of my exes that their intention was they saw what they liked, they came in, and they were looking for me to get that specific apartment. Because I remember one time one of my ex started to really ask me, why I never wanted to just go to the apartment and live on her own. Because for her, the apartment was luxury. Like it's the apartment complex that I show you guys, the one with the bar. And I told her, I don't feel comfortable. I don't think it's worth the time and the money to invest in a specific place. I just rather save for a house. Give me a little bit of time, and we should be able to be up and running. Well, she didn't. She got fed up and left me. And that's pretty cool. I don't really mind. And that kind of demonstrated who she really was. Do I hate women for being materialistic or being gold diggers? Not really. That's always been the case. Everybody's has a certain interest. Even your friends, they might not even be your friends. They're just there for economic reasons or whatever the case it be. Males and females are not not everyone's going to be your ally or your best friends. All of them are there for when it's convenient. Once you don't have nothing to provide anymore, you're going to be left out, or you're going to be on your own, unless you're this charismatic individual that even at your worst, you're going to still be able to provide, at least something in comfort, such as your comedy, your lectures, whatever the case it be. So why am I bringing this up? These are my experiences. There's no good candidates anymore to even have a family. I can't blame the female. If the female doesn't like me, she doesn't like me. I can't force her. I can't make her. I have to compensate for another standpoint. It's just I don't have the patience and time to make a hardcore six-figure income and give it to someone else. Once I put the hard work, I'm gonna be old. Once I get a child, I'm gonna be stuck with a lot of labor, a lot of work, because obviously having a child is a big responsibility. Not only you have to provide for his safety, make sure he's well fed, make sure his health is in good standards. Have everything from medical, from food to education. You also gotta make sure this kid doesn't turn out to be a little crazy. You gotta make sure he doesn't follow the wrong path of other individuals when he's already in middle school or high school. That's a lot of things to really think about. And like I was saying, there's no good partners anymore. A lot of females get excited just for a tiny bit once they see that they're bored or they don't really like me. They move on. They just want to divorce or they want to split up, as long as they can get the child support or anything. If you have a kid, so once again, you're destroying the family. So this is why I don't put up with any relationships anymore. I'd rather just give up and look for other alternatives. This is why I became more mgtow. I'm not bitter. I'm not doing mgtow because this is the only way that I can cope. It's just for me, it's a discipline. I just move on. So today I was at work at the warehouse. I was providing a cleaning service for them, good guy and everything. It's just boomers. We were arguing, not arguing, we were debating, excuse me, about that I should not be very negative. Like I wasn't saying anything black pill or anything black pill related to content. Obviously, I act like I'm a red pillar slash blue pill, and obviously, I don't seem to give the vibe of a negative, pessimistic dude. He thought I was just brainwashed. He's like, I think you're just been influenced by the liberals, and this is why you're not in the position of wanting to get married. And I asked him, we went to so I asked him, so does it make sense to just make a child with a specific girlfriend? Let's say the girlfriend, me and her get together, because there's girls that might rush it a little bit, because a lot of girls either they expect something in return or they want you to rush and commit to them. But there's things to try. Some other standards is it's 50-40, such as she gets, instead of being 50-50 when it comes to rules or standards, for her it's a 40 and for me it's a 50. Sorry guys, give me a second, I need to take a sip of my water. So basically, going back, so me and the boomer, he was telling me that I need to have patience, good times are coming. We have a new government, which I don't get political anymore. I don't get political or anything anymore. I'm very neutral. I respect who's ever in office, and that's it. I cannot just wish, excuse me, I cannot just rely on a miracle. Things take a long process. Sometimes it can, people on top gamble or make decisions. It will be either good or bad. So I don't have that specific fate. This is something I'm really don't quite understand about boomers. Boomers have this like little fantasy of miracles because they have a lot of Christian beliefs. A lot of boomers are more Christian than ever. It's like they put their faith in God, they put their faith in this unknown divine, and expect some of the politicians should be, who have similar beliefs. It's going to get into power and make make things go back to normal, make things affordable and nice. But in reality, golden generation is gone. We are facing a new phase of an industrial technology environment. I'm pretty sure a lot of jobs are going to moderate. They're not going to be they're not going to rely on human labor, manpower, whatever you want to call it. AI is going to become more advanced more than ever. And I told him this, even the government, this new administration, I think it's invested $500 billion on AI. If I'm correct, and I don't mean to sound ignorant, but I think that's what I heard from last time. But I could be wrong, so correct me if I'm wrong in the comment section. But I'm just being humble and letting you guys know, this is what I heard. I think it's either 5 billion or $5 million. I think it's 5 million, but I could be wrong. I heard 5 billion, but I could, some sources kind of misguide you. So I asked him, if things are being renovated, modified, where corporations are not going to be demanding any more, man labor or any human type of labor, what makes you think it's a good idea for me to have children? Just bringing children to the world, it's a little bit of a difficulty to begin with, because my salary is enough for me to be comfortable, be to be safe. If I have more dependents, and it's going to become very very complicated, I'm going to be struggling a little bit. On top of that, you got to make sure his yes, for medical, for food, you know so you want to give your child a better education. You don't want your child to keep repeating the same cycle. Some of us have to repeat the cycle of our parents. Luckily none of us have kids, but we've been doing a little bit better. But at the same time, things are a little bit unaffordable, to put it this way. You have a lot of bills. Your bills consume a lot of your paycheck and the other parts of your savings. You got to make sure that's not being touched. And I gotta keep doing a lot of side jobs just to make sure I'm well good and make sure that I have a little extra. And that's just something I started to tell him. And if things are becoming like this for a while, what makes you think that we're gonna go to a golden age? And I recently told him that a lot of the industrial factories around my town laid off a lot of people. A lot of them said it's because of terrorists, but at the same time, it's only like 10% of the terrorists affecting the work labor. Basically, what's occurring is automation has implemented the demand. So a lot of these factories want to update their technology. They want to be up to date with with China. So they laid off a lot of people, and they're investing in a lot of AI material, automation, robots. So little by little, they're not going to be relying on specific simple tax that a lot of people are accustomed. These factories used to pay a lot. They used to give you a very good salary, and it was weekly paid. So that was something very, very convincing to come to this town, because this town is very mediocre. But if you're willing to work at a specific physical labor job, if you can handle it, you get rewarded. You had your weekly paycheck, excuse me. You had benefits, you had some bonuses, so when you could have a very good day and you can bring home like 1,500 a week or even almost 2 grand. So imagine that. And now things are not the same anymore. See, a lot of boomers are stuck to that early 2000s um, lifestyle, and people just believe it's going to come back. And I don't agree with it. I think things are changing rapidly. Low IQ people are going to start to really not reproduce anymore, because they're not going to be able to take care of themselves. Imagine trying to making them trying to have more kids, and this is where I started really making a lot of um, arguments and providing sources too, because we were like debating. The boomer was really consistent that I was just overreacting. I'm being nervous. I'm being too. Well, I think he said, I had a little bit of a millennial slash anxiety, that we're just lazy. Basically, a typical boomer guilt trip. You're lazy, you don't have ambition, you're just so pessimistic, you're a socialist, you believe in communism. And I'm like, dude, if I was lazy, first of all, I wouldn't even be working 80 plus hours, working, sacrificing a lot of my weekend just to be safe. I'll be very content to ride the bus, live very minimum, and just slack off at the house on the weekend. But I'm not like that at all. I'm ambition. I have a lot of ambition. I have a lot of goals. And this is just one part of my beliefs. Why I'm not having any children at the moment. Obviously, I can't really tell them about my black pill philosophy or mgtow. But then as I made the arguments about the AI, things are modifying a lot. And also excuse me. So I had to take a lot of sip of my water. This warehouse kind of killed me today. A lot of dust, a lot of welding dust, so I'm kind of screwed right now. So please bear with me. In the boomer, just say, you gotta have faith, you gotta believe in God. There's gonna be a good woman. God is electing the right candidates for the country to make sure things are going in the well direction. And I asked him, you can believe what you want. I'm not gonna disabuse your beliefs, but I do believe that corporations and governments are gonna look for the best interest for themselves, so they don't stay on. They want everybody wants to be on top. They want to be. They're all in competition with each other, and we're just the peasant. We're just the people on the low bottom, and we're no longer going to be needed. And I tell you, just wait 10 more years, things are going to change. We already lost 2,000 jobs that no longer exist. Specific receptionists don't require any recession anymore. Specifically in one of these factories, you don't need. Once you walk into the factory, you don't really rely on receptionists anymore. You have a caller operator. If you need a specific application, you just dial the number, and a specific guy would just hand it to you, or just go online. Basically, you walk into the factories, you sign in your name. If you basically just go in, sign in your name. You have a specific appointment or business meeting. But other than that, if you're just looking for application or talk to someone, either you dial the number or they'll give you a specific website, and that's it. You don't see no more receptionists. A lot of the assembly lines, they had a lot of people that were just the typical guys that assemble specific parts. Now you have the automation, which I was a witness, at nighttime when I provide these like maintenance services for these factories. I see the automations on their own. 80% of the time, they're doing some type of work. You just see the engineers, but you don't see like regular people working anymore. This is why third shift and the RB, the in the industries are no longer rely on third shift anymore. You don't get to see that a lot often anymore. Basically, what's needed right now is just welding, engineers, um, people like off like do on who dedicate themselves for sales. But other than that, I don't see like the normal people that used to see back in the early 2000s. This is something quite interesting. So the boomer, I give him a lot of detailed sources of why right now I cannot just bring a kid. And this is something that pissed me off. It's kind of like take your chances with a specific girl. If a girl says yes to you, don't lose the chance. Okay, so I'm gonna have a baby with a girl that later she can divorce me, take half of my half earn, hard earnings, and sometimes these girls will try to take your child away and put them against you. This has happened to a couple of friends of mine who have children, and sometimes they're struggling for the child's custody, or they can't even see them because the baby mom is being a little bit ridiculous, and this is something very devastating. And boomers usually like to give me the specific advice: go to church, find yourself a Christian woman, make sure you both love Christ. But in this, I was getting fed up. This is why I'm getting very frustrated, and I no longer desire to talk to boomers. Boomers just don't give me this interesting vibes anymore. They don't, their conversations just outdated, nothing else to really talk about. And I tell them, honestly, I'm sorry to bring it, to be a potty pooper, whatever you want to call me, but no, there's no such thing as a Christian tradwife. Everybody goes to church for convenience. I'm sorry to say this, but everybody might go to church because they might have something to deal with, something complicated, and they now feel like they deserve to, not deserve, excuse me. Now they believe that they have to look for God's help. People that still believe in specific religion. Other than that, women and religion don't mix. I really told them that actually. I didn't give them specific ones. I'm like, I'm sorry, dude. Religion and women don't seem to be quite allies. It seems like women contradict themselves 100% of the time. And I even told them about specific women pastors that end up becoming, OnlyFans models. And but it was quite interesting. Basically, the boomers, without me telling them specifically about black pill now, but I just told them, the economy's modifying. It's becoming different. We have to adjust to it. So right now, I'm not in the position to just have a kid, and I don't, I don't believe in miracles. I don't believe in having just faith. I got to start really putting the work if I really want to acquire something. And then they try to guilt trip you like, oh, you're just young, you don't know what you're talking about. You have a lot to grow up. And I'm like, and I told me that, dude, I'm in my 30s. 30s is quite enough time to realize about life. So I just started laughing. It's like guilt trip for over nothing. And then they don't have us in when you try to explain about women's psychology behavior. They just believe they're either influenced by liberals or they're satanic forces. But in reality, I tell them, I don't really believe in religion. I just believe that everybody modify, everybody evolved, and nobody has the same beliefs. And women just want to be more independent. They're not going to waste time with lame dudes. To be quite honest, they're not going to waste time with sub fives, high tier normies, or lame guys, or just broke guys. They're just going to spend time with men that are considered more valuable or something to offer. Other than that, it's over. It's just not nothing new. It happened back in Roman times before Christianity or religion, not just Christianity, but I even think, if I'm not correct, even back in ancient China when they were developing their empire in the Roman times, both of them created a specific system structure to rebuild nuclear families so they can repopulate the empire. But other than that, we're just heading towards these times where it's no longer needed to overpopulate. We discover artificial intelligence. This is in psychology too. We study a little bit of psychology. Humans have learned how the brain kind of works. We are able to imitate it and recreate it. And it goes all back to to man. whether you believe in a divine creator or God, but man has always tried to portray it as the God or the most powerful individual. So they're going to create something that can benefit them economically, socially, and just make life easier. So if they can, if they don't, corporations, government, if they know they don't need a lot of population, they're just going to do whatever it takes to make sure we don't overpopulate. Because honestly, there's not enough resources for a lot of people right now. We're seeing some droughts, we're seeing some things. Even though a lot of Christians, a lot of people that don't believe in specific events going around the globe, that's my this is my own opinion. You don't have to really believe me, but just do your own research. There's some parts of the world are liking water, some parts are getting hot. So honestly, I don't think things are going to change anymore. Things are not going to back. Even if governments try to recreate a system to recreate the nuclear family, I don't think it's going to last very long. Because obviously, everybody's not even believing in marriage. Even guys are a little bit lazy too. A lot of them just bring a child to the world because they just wanted some pleasure, and they end up leaving too. They end up leaving the family because obviously you can't take the pressure or the responsibility of taking care of a family. It's a lot of things to really consider. So the boomer, me, we just left at nothing. He just said, "I really hope you change your mind, young man. I really hope you can really see the world a different perspective. Your perspective is very negative. It sounds like you're very socialist." And I just ignore him. I just laugh and I pat him on the back because I still have respect for the elders. It's just I'm sorry. We're not going to agree into anything. Let's end the conversation. No matter what, we're millennials or Gen Zs and boomers have a different opinion now. Boomers are stuck to the golden generations and they're never going to get out of that cycle, and they're never going to accept that things are going to change to this modern new age technological world. But this is why I made this video, is where I no longer want to talk to boomers anymore, because boomers make up very boring conversation. It's like very outdated. It's kind of like you're reading a book that's extremely outdated when it comes to a specific topic, and you just want to move on. I don't have time to fantasize about having a family, having any women. I made up my mind. Do I want children? Of course, I want to every man wants to create a legacy, wants to make an offspring, but at the same time, I gotta make sure I'm high IQ. I have financial status. I need to make sure I'm financially stable. I can provide more than enough to make sure the child can be something productive for society. Because you don't want your upstreams to hold back society. You don't want them to be a leech or a parasite. You gotta honestly, think about it. You can't be just selfish. A lot of men have a lot of blame to do. This is why I don't consider myself an ally for men or women. Because a lot of men, a lot of these bad boys too, not just bad boys, even some of the people that I thought they were decent individuals end up having a kid and abandoning them because obviously he couldn't take the responsibility of taking care of a kid, just by the simple fact you gotta change diapers. Part of the money they used to waste on beer or cigarettes or whatever, nah, has to go to the diapers or has to go to the child, whatever the case it be. So it's something to really think about. This is why I'm just moving on. I got to start taking care of my own, such as myself, and make sure I'm at my retirement ready. And if I'm still young and energetic and I have a little bit of extra time, and of course, I'll start considering maybe looking for a girl or a kid. I already made my mind. Even sometimes my friends do have a point, is why even stress about finding a specific good woman that's going to be loyal. None of them are loyal. A lot of them are just going to get bored and leave you. Because my friend kind of already knows my beliefs. I kind of spit it out little because, they just wanted to know either obviously you have to really say your true beliefs because sometimes they start they kind of expect you that you're a creep or anything. And I tell them, how I feel. They say, you're not, I think you're still, basically my friends say, you're not a bad looking individual. You're not like considered a model, but, I think you're capable of having a girl. You just gotta be more confident and not be so pessimistic. But it's their own opinion. I'm just not going to follow along. I got to start looking for my own interests. We'll see where it goes. But, guys out there listening to this, I hope this helps you. Boomers, it's not worth the time to argue with them or or try to really make them realize the world's super modern. Even with my parents don't seem quite reasonable that the modern world it's a lot different than what it is, but they're still so taught they're so attached to the old days and they still believe that miracles can happen. Obviously, I don't believe in that. I think we're in 2025. Critical thinking, your IQ should be a little bit higher. We had education, we have a lot of information. There's a lot of things to prove that there's no such thing as miracles or flying angels. We gotta really step it up. But either way, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I'm sorry for ranting a little bit. It just kind of pissed me off. Boomers, they're just unreasonable sometimes. So you guys have a wonderful one. Enjoy your weekend and stay tuned and stay safe and keep going or find something to cope with because honestly, there's not much to really look forward to. You guys have a good one.